My name is Anna. If you haven't come to my talks yet, I do lives pretty frequently. 2024 is the year of event, so join me. So I worked in tech for 10 years, and now I'm the founder of Second Careers, and it's a career consultancy that helps job seekers find their place in tech. So if you're struggling how to figure out your first job or next job, let me know and send me a DM. What about you, Candice?
Yeah, so my name is Candice, and I am a front end developer and actually a digital marketer. I didn't realize I was, but I am. And I got started on LinkedIn just in October 2022, and that was when I fell in love because I realized the power of showing up with a personal brand. And so, yeah, I know we're going to discuss a lot about that, but as a result of developing a personal brand, I have been able to launch a web development agency as well as just as of last week a web digital marketing platform. So I am super excited to talk more about both.
Awesome. And it's been so cool to kind of see your brand evolve, your voice evolve over time, because I know we connected a few months back last year, and to kind of see someone go through that process is so amazing. So
Yeah.
cool. So let's get started. Let's talk a few minutes about what is personal branding. So when you hear personal branding, what comes to mind? What's your take on it?
And I think I lost you for a second.
You can go ahead.
Okay. So what is what is personal branding? So personal branding is when you are showing up as your authentic self. And particularly when we're talking about personal branding, we're talking about online. And I like to encourage people to have a unique value proposition. So when you're showing up, it's very tempting to show up kind of like the people that you admire or how you think you should show up. But when you have a unique value proposition, or you say, this is the value that I add to the industry that I'm in, that allows you to have a personal brand attached to who you are, what you do, and the way that you show up and basically solve problems for your clients, your customers, or your company. As we're talking about career seekers, people who are looking for jobs, like why should they hire you? What problems are you solving?
Awesome. So let's dive a little deeper into that. If you are a job seeker, what does personal brand even mean if you're not selling kind of a service outright, but sort of second, it's not like you're selling a product and someone can sign up and pay you right away. Getting hired takes a bit of time. Like, what is personal branding as a job seeker?
Yeah, so I can actually share that as I share from my own experience, if that's okay. So when I showed up on LinkedIn, my whole purpose initially was to be accountable to myself and document my journey. But what I didn't realize is that as I was sharing about some of the challenges that I was facing as I'm building projects, the ways that I've overcome some of these challenges, people that I've connected with, resources that I was using, as I was basically showing up and writing about who I am and how I have credibility in these areas, I started to gain a following from my peers in the industry, but also from those who make decisions, hiring managers, CEOs, recruiters. And so to answer your question, Anna, I think as a career seeker, we can develop a personal brand when we're writing about the ways that we show up professionally, but it doesn't mean that you can't be a real person, right? So sharing stories of the challenges, sharing stories about how you are solving problems for yourself or maybe for some of the problems that you see your dream companies presenting. It really is just allowing your profile, your content to align in such a way where you're bringing credibility to your name in your industry. And so that might seem like what does that really look like? As mentioned, it can be as simple as saying, hey, today I was able to build this project, and here are some of the ways that I overcame the challenges of X, Y, and Z. I have been able to do this, that, and the other. And it's almost like you're bragging about yourself, but at the same time providing value. And so that's how I would say, as a career seeker, you can show up, because that's what I did. And in 60 days, I was able to get 2 jobs, 2 freelance clients. And since then, I've been able to see how personal branding can really just take you so many different places. So.
That's awesome. So you basically started out as a complete career changer from teaching into tech.
Yep.
And then as you started exploring, I remember you mentioning one of the best things that you did in your transition was take a course on writing, which may have also inspired, right? Building a brand and writing about yourself. And that essentially morphed into creating your own web development agency, and helping other job seekers and just anyone that wants to realize the power of branding. So it's really always an evolving space.
For sure.
Essentially. On my end, what I think of when I say personal brand, I really think about like who you are, as who your voice is, right? Like, how do you speak? How do you show up? What do you think about? What do you care about? And in a professional space like LinkedIn, that could be a little limited, which is fine, because you do want to create focus. So one thing that's interesting to consider when you're doing something like talking about yourself is creating a couple of topics of focus based on your life or career goals, right? So when you were changing into tech, you said, okay, I got to figure out how to get my work experience, get a job. So, so, probably you would mention that occasionally, or kind of talk about freelance experience or other projects that you're working on, maybe your passion for tech, things like that. So showing up with some intention and a purpose at first really is a good motivator. But one thing that I wanted to dive into is building out, like, sounding like yourself online. I feel like at first it sounds a little scary and maybe weird. What do you think?
Oh, for sure. It's kind of scary because it's like you're not sure how people are going to receive you. Like I was afraid to even, well, it's called connect on LinkedIn with people that I knew. And so like when I came onto the platform, I didn't connect with anybody from high school, college, friends. Like nobody knew me, because I was like, well, if I show up and I'm weird, at least people don't really know who I am. So that's kind of how I started. But some of us have been on the platform for a while, so that is a fear. That is a valid fear, right? Like you're wondering, am I showing too much of who I am? How will people receive me? Will people think I'm an imposter? Right? I've heard that, where people are like, well, I'm afraid to talk about this because people might say, well, you've only been doing this for 3 months. But even as you were saying, Anna, when we show up as our true selves, we can be confident that we will be received by those who need to receive us, who want to receive us. One of the most important things that we have to think about is, who are we trying to connect with? Who are we trying to attract with our personal brand? I'm not trying to attract my friends. I'm not trying to attract my family. I'm trying to attract the people that make the decisions about who are they going to hire, right? So, yeah, it really does help to think about who you're writing for, but then to show up authentically. And I think storytelling is the way to go when you want to really show up as yourself and know that no matter what, if I can share my story, no one can take that away from me.
Absolutely. Yeah, so storytelling is such a huge component of branding. And that could also be a little confusing at first, because I remember when I was starting, to post on LinkedIn and kind of talk about my coaching program and just myself and my experiences, I didn't really know like which stories to talk about. And over time, what's been interesting is I've become more and more comfortable talking about personal stories and understanding how to link them back to kind of the overall intention of who I wanted to connect with and what do I want to communicate through the story. So as an example, for the past year, all of 2023, I really leaned into the fact that, you know, I have these years of experience. I've worked in tech for 10 years, and I recognize that I've done 3 career pivots and 7 job searches. So just those numbers, right, tell kind of a story. So you may say, okay, well, Anna, you've been in the industry, so it's easier for you, right? You can already kind of have something to share. And it's true. After working in tech, taking a break and starting second careers, I was able to lean on my work experience as the value that I am bringing to my audience. And sometimes you can start from there. But if you don't have direct work experience in tech, for example, or any industry that you're going into, you basically want to lean into the learning experience or the learning journey, right? So there's other stories out there that can help people get to know you, right? So in my case, I leaned on my work experience because that was my starting place. But whatever your starting place is, so you did a boot camp or you're self-taught or you're working on a project or whatever, that's your starting place, right? So it's not always work experience. But back to storytelling, this year I'm actually going to identify some of those key, more inspirational and more personal moments in my life that really motivated and inspired me to where I am today. One story that I'm very excited to kind of share more on LinkedIn and kind of pull into my brand is the fact that my parents, my family, me, were immigrants, right? And we came from Russia in 1990. And like many immigrants, we didn't, well, I was very little, so I learned English very quickly. But my parents were in their 30s and they had to restart their whole life. And they had me as a child, so they had a lot of responsibility. And anyways, there's a lot of inspiration and motivation that came from seeing how they lived their lives. So as you start talking about yourself, you may start at a very maybe transactional level, and that can easily morph into more relational. That's totally fine. Wherever you are, you can start there.
For sure. Yeah, and even when I started, there was this writing course that I did, and they helped us to think about how can we show up, or how do we show up best. So there were 3 different buckets or categories of how you could show up, and they had it listed a different way, but I've kind of rebranded it for myself. But it is, you can show up where you are being instructional. So someone like me who has an educational background, when I would write, it was really easy for me to teach through my writing about something that I had learned, right? So you have instructional, then you have investigative. So maybe there's a question that I'm trying to answer, or I'm struggling with this problem. I would show up as an investigator in my content. And then the other one was inspirational. So like that story that you just shared, Anna, we all have stories, right, that we can look back and say, I was at point A, now I'm at point B. And it's okay to brag about yourself on those things, like do it, right? Because you have an opportunity to brag on yourself, show people how you have been able to make progress, even as an entry-level developer, a person in tech. Like, we all have those stories of how we were able to go from point A to point B, and I would say go for it. So some of those ways of storytelling or showing up are going to be easier for others, just depending on your personality. But I would say even challenge ourselves to tell stories in different ways and see how do people respond to that. Because some people might respond to your inspirational content more than your investigative or vice versa. And then, okay, I need to stay in my lane. So those are just some tips that I would add to like storytelling and how we're discussing that.
Awesome. So if you could give us an example of like, how did you start to lean into maybe new story types, like more inspiration versus just instruction?
So Anna, can you repeat yourself? I think it cut out for a second.
Sure. So I'd love to kind of dive a little bit into the concept of like the different storytelling type stories. um, could you talk a little about how you decided to dive into some more inspirational stories and kind of how you found what are those versus kind of instructional or just from point A to point B type of stories?
Well, as I mentioned, when you start writing, you're like throwing everything out, right? Like you don't know what works for you, what works for your audience. But I got a lot of feedback from people in my DMs after having like an event with you. People would use the word inspirational a lot. And I'm like, really? Like that's how people see me? So then I was like, okay, well, I guess I need to like embrace that and write more inspirational stories. So that could be anything about how I was inspired about someone's journey. So I could tag them and say, hey, like I had an opportunity to talk to Anna Miller and she shared with me this, that, and the other, and that inspired me to blah, blah, blah. It could be where I hope to inspire someone else. Hey, when I started to learn React, I had no idea what I was doing. But today I can do this, this, and this. And guess what? If you're in the beginning of your journey, you can do it too, And so I have found that I show up my best when I am inspirational because I guess that's who I am. I didn't know that people like saw me that way. But when I would see that word over and over, I was like, okay, that's how people are attracted to me. And so that's how I'm going to show up. And of course, like how-tos, I do those every once in a while. But sometimes you gotta let the audience tell you, like let the recruiters and the hiring managers and your peers in the industry tell you, what do I mean by that? Where are you getting the most engagement? What types of posts are you seeing that people respond to more? And as a result, you start getting those DMs, you start getting those interview opportunities. Because hey, I'm all about working in your strengths. If you see that you're strong in an area, like use that. Don't be afraid to try some other things, but it's always good, I think, to figure out what are you strong in. How do people enjoy how you show up, and then just keep going that way. But don't get in the trap. This is what I would say. Don't get in the trap of doing things because that's what people want from you. If it's not life-giving to you, then it's kind of like, what's the point? You're going to burn out. And we don't want people to burn out on showing up on LinkedIn. If you show up authentically, like you'll be able to do that well, I believe.
So the word authentic and speaking your voice, that may sound great. And in a way, it's about the practice of showing up. And authentic means different to every single person, right? Like the way you'll write a post and I'll write a post, even if the same content, it will sound a little different because we're different people. So if you could remember, when you just kind of started transitioning into tech, and we're moving away from teaching, kind of, what did you do to start speaking in your own voice, especially online?
Well, as mentioned, I did take a writing course. And so that course, the way that we showed up was actually on Twitter. So I'm not on Twitter. If you want to check out some of my content there, you can kind of see what I wrote about. But in that writing course, it wasn't for the purposes of getting a job and being seen by recruiters. So like I had no idea how to do that. But one of the things that we learned was how to engage people with your story. So it's not enough just to to share a story, but it's to show up and identify with others. So the truth is, Anna, you and I, we're different. We have different experiences. But there are so many things that we have in common. Every time we chat, we're like, you too? Oh my goodness. And so when you show up online, if you can somehow find those moments where you're like, this is relatable, I think that that is going to allow you to show up authentically, but also to engage others who are looking for your solution. They're looking for your zeal. They're looking for your passion to learn. They're looking for someone to collaborate with, to learn from, to work with. We have a lot more in common than we realize. And so I would say use that to our advantage when we are developing a personal brand online.
Thank you. Yeah. So this comment about we all have a lot more in common than we realize, I feel like that could be inspiring, especially to those that are just starting out and feel like super new to the field, especially in tech, coming from a different career, completely switching, creating a new identity, all that kind of stuff. So if anyone in the audience listening to this is kind of thinking about, okay, how do I start talking about myself? Well, there are people out there that are feeling the way you do, just because we're human and humans have a lot of similarities because we're human. Yeah. Sure. So just talk about how you're feeling, and others will relate. It's 100%. Other people out there will come out and engage with your posts, write you a comment, send you a DM. People have a lot more similarities than we think. So just kind of feel free to share, right? It may be scary to kind of share your feelings, but that is what really resonates with people.
For sure. And Anna, I would even say to remind people, like, yes, like the end goal is I want to get hired. But oftentimes we forget like the networking. So you're not just trying to get the eyes of the hiring managers, the recruiters, the CEOs. Yes, we want them to see our stuff, but oftentimes that happens as your network grows. And as people see something that they may resonate with and they share your post, and then it comes on somebody's feed that's looking for you, you know? And so it's almost like, don't think about, you know, hey, I'm writing this just to get a job, and every post I'm letting people know I need a job, like today. I needed a job yesterday. It's more so of share your journey, share where you are, share your hopes and dreams, write things that align with the types of, you know, companies or people that you want to work with, but also know there's this piece that is very important. Your peers in the industry are very essential to this whole networking thing. And as you build your personal brand and you're getting to know people, and then they just got a job at this place, but then they also are letting people know, hey, I just got hired 2 months ago, but there's an opening, and I want the people that I'm connected with to know about it before anybody else. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's like this beautiful thing that comes from identifying as your true self as you show up, networking with other people, and trusting the process. Like, we literally have to trust the process and get out of our own way and see it's okay. No one's going to cancel you for saying that you struggled with something. You know, like if anything, they're going to be like, "Oh, I like you. I can relate to that. I want to connect." So,
yes, and that is the human experience: wins, challenges, struggles, celebrations, like however we want to name it. It's all part of our experience. So this concept of like talking in your own voice, Ryan here mentioned showing up both professional and sharing a little more about yourself as a person. So showing up in your own voice, being authentic. Maybe you can share your experience with that as a starting point. Like, what does it mean to be both
Yeah.
professional and personal? What do we
Yeah.
do?
That's good, Anna. So, I mean, as I'm showing up here on video, maybe this is the first time that some people that have been following me or come across my content has ever seen me in person. And I hope that, like, the way that I show up here, you have gotten a taste of that through my content because I use emojis. I talk the way that I speak, especially when I'm excited. I'm like, you won't believe what happened! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Or if I'm frustrated about something, I might put a little emoji eye roll there because like I do that in real life. Um, but I think first of all, just being confident in who you are. And when you're writing, again, going back to the storytelling, when you share your story, you're inserting yourself in such a way where it's like you can't help but to be yourself. But it's not just about the storytelling. What value are you bringing to the table? So it kind of goes back to I have this framework, and I don't mind sharing it a bit. But in the beginning, I just encourage people to figure out how can you connect, emotionally engage with people. It's called the EPIC framework. So E is engage, emotionally engage. And so I like to start with a staggering statistic, a story, or something that will allow people to be like, ooh, I want to read more. Um, and then the P is the points of interest. So I'm an educator, and I know that a lot of times when we show up online, like we want to come across value that's going to um, allow us to become better. And so whether it's learning from someone else's experience or my own, those points of interest is where it's like the meat of my content. I may have 3 resources or 3 ways to do something or how I did blah blah blah. And then we go into I, which is inspire, because that's me. So this is my framework. You can change it, but that's where I like to speak to the person who is reading my content, either challenging them to think about how they could use the information that I shared, or have them reflect on the questions that I'm reflecting on. And then lastly is C, because it's epic, a call to action, and that can look different for everyone. I love the way, Anna, that you have even taught me how to have a call to action where I, again, share who I am while I'm showing up and how people can get in contact with me. And so it's almost like when you have those elements and you are speaking to people in a way where it's like this is what you experience, that's your voice. No one can argue with the fact that like that was your experience, that's what you learned, this is how you're showing up, and this is who you are and how people can contact you or get connected with you. So yeah.
That's a great summary. So your experience plus how you talk about it equals your voice,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So you and I, we might still, we'll both kind of like do a recap of our experience of this live, but we'll use different words. Maybe we'll have a
Exactly.
slightly different structure. Maybe we'll highlight different key areas of the conversation. So everyone has a unique experience, even if we all went through the same experience.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So let's say, easy example, bootcamp grads. You graduated in a cohort, you went to classes with people, but every single person has a unique experience, even though you had a group that followed the process and learned every day. So your direct experience plus how you talk about it, that shows up as your voice.
Exactly.
A few things that might be interesting in terms of specifically branding on LinkedIn is there are some tips and tricks in terms of call to action and just framing certain things like the EPIC framework that you have, and getting people kind of excited to read more and get to know you more. Maybe we can talk a little about that. I feel like when you start branding, you're just gonna, write. And that's great that you got to start there.
Yeah, yeah.
But then how do you start like attracting the right people? giving them calls to action, just like how to use some of those like business and sales tactics as an individual who's just talking about themselves.
Right. So, for one thing, I think it's always good not to start with a blank slate. So that's why I have a framework, because even for me, if I were just every day like, okay, what am I going to write about? I mean, I might come up with a topic, but then how am I going to write about it? So that's why I like framework so much. And there's so many, like you can research story frameworks or writing frameworks or whatever. I think that is a good way to start. But then even, like you mentioned, call to actions. When we are, showing up as our true selves and we want people to take action on what they read, I think it's important to remind people who you are at the end. Like it might seem kind of redundant, like, okay, my name is at the top and they see my tagline. So why should I like at the end let people know who I am and why I'm here? Well, it's not going to hurt, right? And also they might have forgotten why they even started reading your post. And so by the time they get to the end, they know, oh, okay, Candice is looking for an opportunity to use her experience as a former educator, now web developer in ed tech. Oh, I'm so glad that she made that very clear. And then she has invited me to send a message to her. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it. Even though I was a little nervous and I was thinking about it before, she left the door open for me. So when you have that call to action, it just moves people a little quicker to maybe do something that they were thinking subconsciously, like, oh, I would really love to connect with this girl. I love her story. And then at the end you say, DM me. Oh, I can DM you? Okay, cool. So yeah, I think it just allows you to have that invitation for connection, interaction, because I'm an introvert. You might not think it, Anna. People watching might not believe me. But even to like reach out through a DM can be scary for me. And so when I see someone say, oh, and you can DM me, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to bother them, And so those are kind of my thoughts about like how important the call to actions are. And just like, again, inviting people. You want to invite people to know more about who you are, and so it's never a loss. In fact, I think it is the greatest thing to make sure you have a call to action, because if not, people read it, like it, and move on. They might not even like it. They might love what you wrote, but you didn't help them to think about what are the next steps.
Right. So that's really valuable to keep in mind. What if you're really resonating with people that come across your content, learn who you are? Let's say you're posting a couple of times a week and they're used to seeing you, so you're part of their community on LinkedIn. But there's no real call to action. Like people aren't clear about what your intentions are in terms of what value you're looking for. So if you're providing a ton of value for people by showing up, sharing your stories, engaging with them, but you're not having an ask for yourself, that may be a disconnect, right? If you're starting to build a brand, but you don't really showcase what you're offering. It could be skills, right, for a full-time job. It could be a service. In general, how I like to think about it is when you're selling or renting your skills to a company, essentially you have your own freelance business, right? So in America, in my viewpoint, everyone is their own business essentially. And we just have different contracts. Some have full-time contracts, some part-time, some short-term, long-term, whatever. But like LinkedIn is the place to create those business relationships. So
Yes, I agree.
what is your take on that?
Yeah, I love that. I never thought about it like that. I feel like that has been something that I've been wrestling with, where you said everybody pretty much like you're marketing yourself for these contracts, full time, part time, whatever. And that's why at the beginning, when I introduced myself, I was like, I'm an accidental digital marketer, because when when you're doing personal branding, you're essentially marketing yourself, right? Like, and that is one of, I believe, is one of the most essential skills, especially in today's digital space that we're in. When you show up online and you develop a personal brand, a strong presence, it's gonna seem like, well, goodness, this is something I wasn't expecting, but it is a skill that like could really open up so many different doors. So like your first, I guess, goal could have been, I just want a full-time job, but it might be where, how I was when I wrote for my first 60 days, I got offered a job and a contracted teaching position. I wasn't looking for that, but I took both of them. I took both of them because it worked for me. It also allowed me to start freelancing, which that could be a whole nother event, Anna. Oh my goodness, because freelancing offers the opportunity for experience. It offers the opportunity for you to get paid work experience, not just experience, but paid work experience. And then you have these references, right? And it builds your confidence as you have built projects and you've gotten paid for them. Like, you show up different. And so, again, personal branding is marketing online. You're marketing yourself, but there is a way to do it where it feels authentic, and yeah, you do it in a way where it is a win-win for everyone. So those are my thoughts.
Awesome. So let's see. One thing that I think would be very interesting to cover is, someone who is inherently shy and never really posted much online. And a lot of people on social media, even though there's billions of people posting, there's still a lot that are just consuming. So what if you're just used to consuming media, and you're looking for your first or second job, and you're like, why do I have to do this? Like, I didn't sign up for marketing. I just want a software engineer job or product design. I just want to like live my life. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
You know that feeling?
Yeah, it can seem scary. I told you, I'm an introvert. So even when I showed up, I was like, I hope nobody I know sees me, because I don't know what I'm doing over here on this platform. But no, I think that's fair. I would say the reason to even try and to give it a chance is because less than 1% of the users on LinkedIn are actually creators. Okay, so like, if you can show up in the 1%, and then you think about just in your industry, you're going to stand out more than your counterparts. So one of the things that I like to say when I talk about like writing on LinkedIn is, this is one of the best ways to rise above the noise. There's so much noise. You see a lot of people who are obviously on LinkedIn. They share other people's content, right? But what if you could show up and have credibility because you have provided value? You don't have to show your face, right? You can write simple 150 words or less on a post, close your laptop and just pray and be like, I'm done. Like, I have done that, where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let me just type it and close my laptop. It's okay. But one thing that I can guarantee is that when you do that enough, no matter where you're starting from, when you start getting that engagement and you get that one person that says, that was really good, I never thought about it like that, you realize you have something to bring to the table. Whether you're an extrovert or introvert, this is your first time writing, like, everyone starts at zero. Everyone started at zero. In October 2022, I had no followers, no connections. I didn't know what I was doing. But now, like, I can show up and say, I know I bring value to the table. Now, if I go over to Instagram, I'm not going to feel like that, because that's a whole nother thing. And, if I show up on YouTube, I got to show my face. So, like, I'm going to feel differently there. But here on LinkedIn, I'm like, okay, I have found my home because I started somewhere. We all got to start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And on my end, I also was I just was not on LinkedIn, period. I had a profile, but I was not active. I really didn't get into this online media space at all until I decided I was going to grow a business and share my background with others and create value for them, for myself in this online space. And LinkedIn's like the best place to do that. It has 1 billion members and less than 1% are posting. So that's just wild. And it's going to take a while for that to actually change. What's interesting is just like on any social media, LinkedIn is really good at creating these like bubbles of creators and anyone that's in that space. So let's say you follow a bunch of software engineers, anyone from 0 to 10 years to 20 years experience, but you create like a bubble of educating yourself and sharing about yourself. And then in that bubble, the people you won't see necessarily, but are there are also recruiters, hiring managers, engineering managers, product managers, designers, like people that are also just seeing who's in their feed, just scrolling.
Right.
So it's interesting, like you can create a bubble and use that to inspire yourself, but also like create value for people in that, like it can become a true community if you curate it.
I agree. And that's been really cool to experience, where it's like, I see some of the same people and I see their posts and I see the things that they like and I'm like, ooh, I'm not following that person. Let me follow them because I follow this person and they're very similar in interest. And so, there is like this bubble, this community, and some people might say it's an algorithm. I don't know how that works on LinkedIn, but I love whatever is going on. Like it's tailored for what you need and what you want. And so again, like we can use that to our advantage, both as a consumer and as a creator. But when you create, you're up there, like you are getting more eyes on your content, because when you apply for that job, they're gonna search for you. They're gonna come to LinkedIn and they're gonna search your name and see how are you showing up. And if you are showing up with credibility because you have documented what you're doing, what you're learning, the challenges you're overcoming, versus someone else that just has a profile and they posted their resume and they ask for a job, guess who's going to stand out? Like who's really going to stand out? So yeah, that's very important. That's just vision, for what it could do for career seekers.
Yeah, so if you think of personal branding as a way to stand out, it becomes a more direct path, right? A lot of times people that aren't posting about themselves or find it really difficult to start sharing publicly, they don't see the zoomed out picture. The zoomed out picture is if you apply, let's say, for 10 jobs today and every recruiter goes and checks out your profile, what about you will motivate them to contact you? It's not going to be just your resume. Like the resume is basically dead. Like my opinion is the resume is dead. Like the resume does not matter.
It doesn't. It does not have the same weight that it did before.
No. And LinkedIn is your resume. And what's more, your brand, your voice is the resume, right? So if you want to have a metaphor or a connection to the power of the resume, the power is you showing up, is making a post and talking about yourself. So if I see 2 profiles and one submitted their resume and second also, but I go to their LinkedIn because every recruiter out there, like they want to see that you're a real person. Like a piece of paper doesn't prove it. There's been scams and all kinds of weird stuff going on. So basically, when someone goes on your LinkedIn profile and person A has, 3 recent posts talking about their learning journey, and person B has 1 post 6 months ago saying they just started boot camp, who do you think the recruiter is going to talk to first or put in the pile of like, okay, I'm going to actually talk to them? I get it. The resume may influence some things too. But in today's market, things go so fast and hiring pipelines fill up so fast. A
Mhm.
lot of people ask me about standing out. Talk about yourself.
Yeah.
Literally, the one thing you need: zero money, just time. You can even do 5 minutes a day. You
Mhm.
literally got to just put out something about yourself that's professional enough. What do
Yeah.
you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. And still to this day, I get DMs from people offering me opportunities to interview for jobs. I don't have a green banner up. I'm not looking for a job. I'm good. But I still get DMs because people will say, hey, I saw that you wrote about this, that, and the other, and we're looking for a web developer that does this. And I will say, I'm sorry. I'm not looking for a job, but here's the cool thing. Remember, we talked about networking. I will say, but I know someone who is looking for a position. Here is their profile. Maybe you want to check them out. So I will refer people, even opportunities to interview or apply for a job, to people in my network that I have read their posts. I know what they're about. They're looking for a job. And so I will refer people. And again, that's just the power of personal branding. They came to me. I'm in a good position. I don't need a job, but I know someone that does because they've been writing, they've been showing up, their profile is optimized, and I think they would be a good candidate. And so again, like there is this whole ecosystem. I know you talk about that, Anna, like an ecosystem. And so the networking, um, showing up professionally, providing that value, like it does more than just attract the hiring managers. It also allows your network to say, I think that would be a good candidate. So yeah.
Yeah. So if you're thinking, okay, I have, 500 people as my first connections, how do I have them help me? Like I've heard you saying, oh, people help you, people can help me. How do we do that? If you give them information, they can help you. If you
Yeah.
don't show up and don't give them anything, like a post about yourself or what you're looking for, it could be a DM, it could be a post, it could be an event you join, or it could be a networking thing, whatever. But you got to give something to people to help you with, right? You got to give them some kind of hook. They can't just
Yep.
like help you if they don't know what you're looking for and what resonates with you and things like that.
Hmm.
So, one thing I wanted to go back to is, you know, why is 1% or less posting? Like, what do you think is happening?
It's scary. It's scary to get started. We kind of touched on that earlier. I think that's why. But um, I mean, honestly, I think that we know showing up, like you want to show up correct, quote unquote, right? Like you may hear someone say, you should start showing up. And then you're like, okay, I want to, but how? So oftentimes people want to and then they don't know how. Okay, so that's one reason. And then there's some people that know how, but then they've allowed that imposter syndrome to get in the way that does not allow them to take that first step. All right. And then there's some people that have taken the first and second step and maybe they pulled back and they're not doing it anymore because they didn't get the response that they wanted after the third post or whatever. So there's so many different reasons. But I would say in all of those reasons, um, the resources are available, right? The resources are available if you don't know how to show up. Follow me. I share tips all the time. Follow Anna. Follow the people in our network. We're always sharing these things. Um, if you have taken that step and you have written 3 to 5 posts and you're like, see, it's not working. Well, don't give up. Like consistency is important. And if you know how to do it and you haven't taken that first step, maybe you just need some encouragement. I'm just going to say it right now. DM me. I will be your cheerleader right now, today. DM me if you're like, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I will cheerlead for you. Let's go. Write your first post today, okay? Because I want you succeed. And sometimes it's just taking that first step. It is scary. And like we know, both of us have
Yeah.
in the first and second, and even sometimes the 100th step is scary. I didn't write any last week because my son was sick. So guess what? I kind of feel scared to like show back up because I kind of lost some momentum. But it is the normal human experience. And guess what? I'm going to talk about that in my post. I'm here. I'm a little afraid. I don't know why, but I'm back and I'm going to restart. And, I'm glad that I'm able to restart at any time. So, yeah.
Yeah, so everyone's at a different place in their journey. And yeah, if you need a cheerleader, contact us, DM Candice, DM me, DM someone on LinkedIn that is inspiring for you, or reach back out to someone that's been helpful. Some people feel really upset when others stop talking to them. It's not like they stop, they just don't continue the conversation. But what about you continuing the conversation with others, right? Same thing.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's kind of creating this circle of engagement with each other, to help each other and lift all of us up, essentially.
Oh, that's good, Anna. Yeah, we need each other. We do.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, this market going forward, things are so virtual now. Your brand, which means your voice, which means posting on LinkedIn, which means just interacting, engaging with people, that is the key tool. That's like the magic key that everyone's trying to figure out. It's right there. You don't have to pay for LinkedIn. You don't have to pay to post, right? LinkedIn can pay you to post, maybe. But it's completely free. And taking that step, first, second, continuous step to show up, that's the key to the process. And then you add on networking and engagement and stuff. But like your first stab at personal branding, you did for 60 days straight, right?
Yeah, I took the weekend. I may have taken like a Saturday or Sunday off each week.
Yeah,
But for the
that's
most
fine.
part, like, yeah, yep, I did.
And how did you feel like maybe a few posts in? Did you want to give up? Did you have some thoughts that blocked you? Like what happened?
Can you say that one more time? I think I cut out. I apologize.
A few days into your posting when you just started,
Yeah.
what was your experience like? Were there times that you wanted to give up? Were your expectations maybe blocking you from continuing? What was going on?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I was showing up to be more accountable to me. So it was like, okay, I'm going to do this so that I have some documentation that I was doing something for me because nobody knew who I was. And you would expect, like, when you write your first few posts, like, because I didn't know anybody, nobody was going to read it. But I was kind of surprised, Anna, because like I think it was day 3 or 4, I had a few people like or share, and I was like, oh my goodness, people are reading my stuff. Okay, well, I guess I need to be a little bit more intentional. So I never had the chance to really, I guess, like say, I'm not doing this anymore. Like I could have done it second post, third post, but like I said, it was like day 3, 4, or 5 where I started to get just a little bit. Now it was just like one like here, a comment there, but I was like, that's more than I had. I didn't even know anybody cared. And so for me, just that little bit of interaction, that engagement helped me to see it's okay for me to show up. It's okay for me to write about these things because it's resonating with someone. And then I just kept going. And then there were days, right? There's always going to be days where, like, you know what? I don't want to do this. Or I'm tired today. So in those moments, I could say I'm taking a day off, which I could have done. Because, again, I didn't let anybody know I was going to write for 60 days. That was a decision I made. And I could have quit at any time, or taken a break at any time, or I could have written that day anyway. And so honestly, you have to have some intrinsic motivation when you are showing up because nobody is going to ask you unless you have like a coach or someone who's walking through it with you. But nobody's going to say, did you write today? Oh, you didn't write today. Well, are you going to do it tomorrow? Like, you have to know and be confident about you showing up over time is going to allow you to have something that is going to show you as a credible, valuable person in the industry because you are showing people that. And I would even say, what if nobody reads or comments on your posts? Guess what? You have a library of content. At the least, you have posts that have, it's a library of content that you can always refer recruiters to and say, I wrote some things, you might want to check that out. So it's always going to be a win-win. And yes, there were days I wanted to give up. There were days that I was like, nobody's ever going to read this. And I was pleasantly surprised. And sometimes, even today, I can't write every single day. And I don't think that is something that you should do. You shouldn't attain to that. 2 to 5 days a week, depending on what you're doing. Are you working? Do you have kids? Like, all those things you need to take into consideration. Why did I do 60 days? Because I wasn't working. My kids were in school. So I made that decision to treat it as my job. And that's what I did. And the payoff has been amazing.
Yes. Thank you so much for that inspiration. And treating your job search as your job, a lot of people do already look at it like that, but they may not realize that there's this entirely new tool that's not your resume, but literally publicly talking about yourself. That is so much more effective and engaging than anything else that they've used before. So the last couple of years, like, LinkedIn has evolved and become this platform that really is effective. And it's maybe a little hard for people to get on board because the myth of the resume has been around for so long. But, we used to call each other on the phone and that was that, but now we have Zoom. So things evolve, is what I'm saying.
Sure. Yep. I agree. And I like it. I like the way that it's evolved. Maybe because I'm a techie. I like even, how we're able to do this live. I've never done this before. And so I appreciate you inviting me to do it. And I can't wait to figure out how I can start doing more of it. But it's really neat, the opportunities that we have to show up virtually and develop a personal brand or to offer a service and have your own business or freelance, and never have to leave your house. And it's great to leave your house. We need to leave our house, but sometimes it's not always so accessible. And so we have this as well. So I'm grateful we live in this day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm sure we'll collaborate again soon. And if you've watched till the very end, please let Candice and me know what your takeaways are, what you learned, and one action item that you can take from this talk.